Most people who earn $75,000 a year believe they can afford a $40,000 car. The math feels simple. The dealership says yes, the bank approves the loan, but here's the part no one mentions. That car doesn't cost $40,000. Over the next decade, it will quietly extract close to $100,000 from your financial life. And the strangest part? You'll never feel like you made a mistake. You'll just feel like you're always behind. I'm Arya, and this channel doesn't tell you what to buy or sell. We explain how money actually works, especially the parts that feel invisible. Today, we're looking at one of the most normalized financial decisions in middle-class life, the car payment. Not because cars are bad, but because the way we pay for them has become one of the quietest wealth destroyers in the American financial system. And most people never see it coming. Let's start with something simple. You walk into a dealership, you see a truck you like, the sticker says $48,000, you sit down with the finance manager. They ask you one question: what monthly payment works for you? That question sounds helpful. It sounds like they're working with your budget, but that single question is where the entire transaction shifts. Because once you answer it, the dealership stops talking about the price of the vehicle. They stop talking about the interest rate. They stop talking about the total amount you'll actually pay. They only talk about the monthly number. And here's why that matters. Let's say you tell them you can do $850 a month. The manager nods, they run some numbers, and suddenly that $48,000 truck fits your budget. How? They stretched the loan to 84 months, 7 years, at 7.5% interest. You don't feel the trap because the monthly payment feels manageable. It's less than your rent, it's less than daycare, it fits. But here's what just happened. Over those 84 months, you won't pay $48,000 for that truck. You'll pay closer to $71,400. That's $23,400 in interest alone, money that goes directly to the lender, not toward the vehicle. And here's the part that makes this even harder to see. The truck starts losing value the moment you drive it off the lot. Most people know cars depreciate, but they don't realize how fast. In the first year, that $48,000 truck will lose around 20% of its value. That's $9,600, gone in 12 months. If you tried to sell it after 1 year, you'd get roughly $38,000, but you still owe $44,000 on the loan. You're underwater by $6,000, and you haven't missed a single payment. This is called being upside down on a loan, and it's not rare. It's the norm for new car buyers in the first 3 years of ownership. So now let's add up what this vehicle actually costs. You're paying $71,400 over 7 years. You're also paying higher insurance because the truck is new and financed. Let's say that adds $150 a month compared to an older paid-off car. Over 7 years, that's another $12,600. Then there's registration, which is higher on newer vehicles. Maintenance, which modern trucks require at certified service centers with expensive parts. Gas, which on a large truck averages $250 to $300 a month, depending on your commute. When you add it all up, the loan, the interest, the insurance, the depreciation, the operating costs, that $48,000 truck will cost you somewhere between $90,000 and $105,000 over the 7 years you're paying for it. And at the end of those 7 years, the truck is worth maybe $18,000. You spent $100,000. You own an asset worth $18,000. Here's the psychological part that makes this so hard to escape. It doesn't feel like you're losing money. The payment is automatic, the truck runs fine, you're not defaulting, you're doing what everyone else is doing. In fact, when you look around, most people you know have a car payment. It feels normal, responsible even. But normal and sustainable aren't the same thing. The average American now keeps a car payment for nearly their entire working life. They finish one loan, and within a year or two, they trade in and start a new loan. The payment never disappears. It just restarts. And because the payment is always there, they never build the financial margin to pay cash for the next car. They're locked in a cycle where the car payment becomes permanent. Here's what makes that cycle so expensive. Let's say you're 28 years old. You take out your first car loan, $750 for 6 years. Then at 34, you trade in and finance again, another $800 for 6 years. Then at 40, you do it again, and again at 46, and again at 52. By the time you're 58, you've had a car payment for 30 years. If you add up those payments, $750 to $850 over 3 decades, you've sent between $270,000 and $300,000 to car dealerships and lenders. Now imagine if instead you had bought reliable used cars with cash and invested that $800 into a retirement account. At a conservative 8% annual return, that $800 over 30 years doesn't just become $300,000, it becomes $1.1 million. That's the opportunity cost, not the cost of the car, the cost of the decision to always have a payment. And here's the part that makes this even harder to see. You never see that $1 million. It's not taken from your account, it's just never created. It's ghost wealth, erased before it ever existed. Most people don't think this way because the car feels necessary, and it is. You need transportation, you need reliability. But the belief that reliability requires a new car or an expensive car is where the trap closes. According to long-term reliability data, a 3-year-old Toyota Camry with 35,000 miles is just as reliable as a brand new Camry, sometimes more, because early manufacturing issues have already been identified and fixed. But that 3-year-old Camry costs 30% less. Someone else already absorbed the depreciation hit. You get the same transportation, the same safety features, the same remaining lifespan for $15,000 less. And if you pay cash for that car instead of financing it, you've just eliminated the interest, the extended loan trap, and the insurance markup. You've also done something even more important. You've stopped the cycle. Because once you own a car outright, that $800 a month that would have gone to a bank now can go into a car replacement fund. In 3 years, you'll have $28,800 saved. In 5 years, $48,000. Enough to buy your next car in cash. And again, and again. The payment never comes back. And that's when the long-term math starts working for you instead of against you. Most people never reach that point, not because they're irresponsible, but because they were never shown the full picture. They were only shown the monthly payment. Now let's go back to that $800 a month. If you're 28 years old and you decide just once to break the cycle, something changes. Instead of financing a new car every 6 years for the rest of your working life, you buy a reliable used car with cash. Maybe it's a 5-year-old Honda Accord. Maybe it's a Toyota RAV4 with 50,000 miles. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you own it outright. And now that $800 a month that would have gone to a bank, you send it to yourself, into a retirement account, a brokerage account, anywhere it can grow. At an average return of 8% per year, which is conservative based on long-term stock market performance, that $800 over 30 years doesn't just add up to the payments you avoided. By the time you're 65, that account holds approximately $2.6 million. Not from a high salary, not from a side hustle, not from crypto or real estate speculation, from one decision to stop having a car payment. That's the number most people never see because they're not taught to think in decades. They're taught to think in months. And in any given month, $800 feels manageable, it feels normal, but sustained over a lifetime. It's the difference between financial independence and working until you're 70. Here's the part that makes this even harder to escape. Most people don't just have one car loan in their lifetime. They have 5, 6, 7. And each time they trade in, they're often carrying negative equity from the previous loan. Let's say you financed a $35,000 SUV 4 years ago. You still owe $22,000, but the vehicle is only worth $18,000. You want to upgrade. The dealership offers to take your trade-in and roll that $4,000 gap into your new loan. Now you're financing a $40,000 car plus the $4,000 you still owed on the old one. Your new loan is $44,000. You're paying interest on a car you no longer own. And if this happens again in 3 years, now you're carrying debt from 3 vehicles, but only driving one. I've seen cases where people are making $1,100 monthly payments on a mid-tier sedan because they're effectively paying for that car, the previous SUV, and the truck before that. They're drowning. And the worst part? The car they're driving could be totaled tomorrow. Insurance pays out the current value, not what they owe. They're left with a $10,000 gap and no vehicle. This is called being upside down on a loan, and it's not an edge case. It's the default experience for people who finance new cars every few years. So why do smart, reasonable people keep doing this? Two reasons: safety and status. Let's start with safety. Car manufacturers have spent decades convincing parents that if they don't buy the newest SUV with every possible safety feature, they're putting their children at risk. The message is clear: don't you care about your family? But the data tells a different story. A 5-year-old vehicle with modern safety standards, airbags, anti-lock brakes, stability control, is statistically almost as safe as a brand new one. The marginal safety improvement between a 2020 model and a 2026 model are real, but they're small. You're paying a 40% premium for what amounts to a 2% increase in safety. That's not rational. That's fear-based spending. And then there's status. You can't wear your retirement account to the office. You can't display your emergency fund at the grocery store. But your car, that's visible. That's public. For high earners who don't yet feel rich, and that's most of the middle class, the car becomes the primary signal that they've made it. It says, "I'm doing well. I work hard. I deserve this." And that feeling is real. The desire for validation is real. But here's the uncomfortable truth. No one cares about your car as much as you think they do. When someone sees you in a luxury SUV, they're not thinking about you, they're thinking about themselves. They're imagining themselves in that vehicle. It's a mirror, not a spotlight. You're spending $70,000 to impress people who aren't paying attention. And even if they were, what are you actually signaling? Wealth? Or the appearance of wealth? Because the person driving the $80,000 Range Rover might be one missed paycheck away from repossession. The person in the 8-year-old Camry might have $400,000 in index funds. You can't tell who's wealthy by looking at their driveway. You can only tell who wants to look wealthy. There's also the leasing trap, which is often marketed as the smart, low-commitment way to drive. You're just renting the car, no long-term commitment. You get a new one every 3 years. But leasing is the most expensive way to operate a vehicle, period. When you lease, you're financing the steepest part of the depreciation curve. You're paying for the car during the years it loses the most value. And then, right when the depreciation slows down and the car becomes cheaper to own, you give it back. You never build equity. You never own anything. You just restart the payment every 3 years. It's a subscription model for transportation, and subscriptions are designed to extract maximum revenue over time while giving you minimum ownership. Leasing makes financial sense in exactly one scenario: if you're a business owner writing off the expense and replacing vehicles for tax strategy. For everyone else, it's just a structured way to stay broke. And in 2026, the traps are evolving. Car manufacturers are now embedding subscription fees into the vehicles themselves, heated seats that require a monthly unlock, faster acceleration locked behind a paywall, navigation systems that stop working unless you renew. You're not buying a car anymore. You're buying access to a platform. And the platform can change the rules whenever it wants. Modern cars are also surveillance devices. They track your location. They monitor your driving habits. Some manufacturers sell that data to insurance companies, who then raise your rates based on how you drive, even if you've never had an accident. Driving an older, non-connected car isn't just a financial decision anymore. It's a privacy decision. So here's what this all comes down to. The car payment isn't just a bill, it's a choice about what kind of financial life you want to live. If you keep the payment, you're choosing convenience and status now in exchange for freedom later. And that trade might feel worth it in your 30s, But by your 50s, when your peers are retiring early and you're still working because you need the income, the math looks different. The wealthiest people I know don't drive new cars. They drive paid-off cars, often older ones, not because they can't afford better, but because they decided a long time ago that their net worth mattered more than their image. And once you stop sending $800 a month to a bank, something shifts. You're not just saving money, you're buying time, margin, options. You're buying the ability to take a lower stress job, to work part-time in your 60s, to help your kids without going into debt, to retire at 62 instead of 72. That's what the car payment actually costs. Not $50,000, not even $100,000. It costs you a decade of your life. If this changed the way you think about your next car decision, that's all this video was meant to do. We're not here to tell you what to drive. We're here to help you see the full picture. So when you make the choice, it's actually your choice. Thanks for thinking long-term with us. I'll see you in the next one.